If you pray at night, if you have ever wondered whether God hears you when you pray in the darkness, and if you have ever woken up at midnight or 3 a.m. wondering whether there is a deeper spiritual meaning behind it, then you need to hear this testimony to the very end. My name is Sarah, and I need to tell you something I have never been able to fully explain without people looking at me like I had lost my mind. I died. And during that experience, Jesus showed me a shocking truth about praying at night. He showed me why some people pray for hours but never find peace. He showed me what can happen when fear, guilt, anger, and anxiety follow you into bed. And he revealed the one thing many Christians completely misunderstand about praying at night. So do not skip ahead. Do not dismiss this because you think you already know how prayer works. Because the final message Jesus gave me may change the way you pray tonight. It was a Tuesday night in February. I remember that clearly because I had just gotten off a double shift at the hospital where I worked as a nurse. I was exhausted. The kind of tired that goes past your body and gets into your bones. I had been skipping meals, barely sleeping, running on caffeine and stress for weeks. I drove home in the rain. The road was dark. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat and I thought I should just let it go. I did not let it go. I reached for it. That was the last thing I remembered before the car hit the guardrail. When the paramedics arrived, I had no pulse. There was significant blood loss. I was told later they worked on me for over 4 minutes at the scene before getting anything back. 4 minutes. And in those 4 minutes, I was somewhere else entirely. The moment I left my body, I was somewhere I cannot describe using normal words. There was no sense of time. No anxiety. The weight I had been carrying for months just disappeared. And I was aware, fully aware, more aware than I had ever been in my physical life. And then he was there. I knew immediately who he was. No introduction needed. No moment of confusion. It was like suddenly remembering something you had always known but had somehow forgotten. The first thing I noticed was that he was not looking at me with disappointment or judgment. He was looking at me the way a person looks at someone they have been waiting a long time to talk to. He said, "I want to show you something." And then it started. The first thing he did was bring me to what looked like a room full of people. Hundreds of them, all in different places, all praying at night. But he pointed to something specific. Some of them had their eyes fixed on a clock, checking the time, waiting for a certain hour, like the number itself was what would make God finally listen. He looked at me and said, "Watch what they are actually focused on." And I saw it clearly. They were focused on the hour, not on him. That was the first thing he wanted me to understand. And it surprised me, because I had believed this myself. I had set alarms. I had dragged myself out of sleep to pray at midnight because I thought that was where the power was. He said clearly, "That is not how I work." He explained that God does not operate according to superstition. Midnight is not a magic hour. 3 in the morning is not automatically more powerful than 3 in the afternoon. The power is not in the clock. The power is in God. He brought to my mind Psalm 63 verse 6. "When I remember thee upon my bed, and meditate on thee in the night watches." He said David was not following a formula. David was simply choosing to think about God when everything else went quiet. That was the whole point. Then he showed me his own pattern, Luke 6 verse 12. Going up a mountain and praying all through the night. Not as a ritual, not as a performance. As uninterrupted time with the Father, away from the crowd, away from the noise. He said to me, "The night can give you that space. But the night itself is not the point. I am the point." We had been chasing the formula when he had always just wanted us to come to him. Then he took me somewhere else. He showed me one person sitting at a desk during the day trying to pray. And I could see everything happening around that person at the same time. The phone lighting up, a conversation in the next room, a mental to-do list running in the background, a worry about a bill. Their mouth was moving in prayer, but their mind was everywhere else. Then he shifted the scene to that same person at night. House quiet. Lists had stopped. And for the first time all day, there was actual space to be still. What he was showing me was how much noise fills a human life during the day. Not just sound. The notifications, the responsibilities, the conversations, the anxiety, the entertainment. All of it running simultaneously in the background. He said most people never actually become still. Even when they sit down to pray during the day, the mind keeps pulling somewhere else. He pointed to Psalm 46 verse 10. Be still, and know that I am God. He was specific about what that means. He said it does not mean emptying your mind or sitting in silence waiting for a mysterious voice. It means deliberately turning your attention toward God, choosing to focus on Him instead of the noise. He said Jesus Himself operated this way. Mark 1 verse 35 shows Him rising before daylight, going to a solitary place, removing the crowd and the demands so He could be fully present with the Father. He said, the night gives you that same opportunity. Use it not to perform a ritual. Use it to actually show up. Then He brought me to see a person going through their day, busy, moving fast, laughing at work, scrolling their phone on break, watching something on television in the evening. And I could see underneath all that activity something the person was clearly avoiding, a grief they had not faced, a guilt about something they had done, a fear they kept pushing back down every time it tried to surface. Then He showed me that same person at night when all the distractions were finally gone, and the thing they had been running from all day was right there waiting. He said, darkness outside can expose what is hidden inside, not to shame you, but because quiet moments make it harder to run from yourself. And this is where He said prayer becomes powerful, because instead of reaching for the phone to drown it out, you can bring it to Him. He pointed to Psalm 139 verses 23 to 24. Search me, O God, and know my heart. He said David was not asking God to condemn him. He was inviting God into the places he himself was afraid to look at. He said to me directly, my presence is not a place where you need to perform. You do not need to come to me pretending everything is fine. You can come to me with everything that is not fine. You can tell me you are afraid. You can tell me you are angry. You can confess what you actually did. I have already seen it. I just want you to stop running from it and start bringing it to me. He said that is where real prayer begins. Not in performance. In honesty. Then he showed me something next that was hard to watch. He showed me a person who had not prayed in months. Going about their life, fine, comfortable, busy. Then he moved forward to the moment everything fell apart for that person. A phone call with bad news. And suddenly that same person was on their knees, crying out to God. And God was right there listening. But Jesus looked at me and said quietly, I was also there 6 months ago, and they did not come. He said many people only remember God when life falls apart. Not as a criticism, as a simple observation. They pray when the diagnosis is bad, when the marriage is collapsing, when the money disappears, when they are terrified. And God hears every one of those prayers. But he said, I do not only want to be your emergency contact. I want relationship. I want to be included in the ordinary days, not just the crisis ones. A person who only prays when everything falls apart will miss out on everything prayer can actually be. He brought up 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 17, pray without ceasing. He explained it does not mean speaking words to God every literal second. It means maintaining a life that keeps turning back toward Him, including at night when nothing is wrong. He said, prayer is not a crisis tool. Prayer is fellowship with the Father. Then he took me to see something I recognized immediately, because I had lived it almost every night before the accident. He showed me a person lying in bed in the dark, body still, but their mind running through every possible bad outcome for tomorrow. What if the job falls through? What if the results are bad? What if the conversation goes wrong? What if I cannot handle what is coming? The body was lying down, but the mind was wide awake and afraid. And Jesus stood beside that person and said quietly, they have not given it to me yet. He said this is one of the most common things he sees at night. People lie down physically but never actually rest because they are still holding everything themselves. He pointed to Matthew 6 verse 34, take therefore no thought for the morrow. He said this is not telling you to ignore your problems or be irresponsible. It is inviting you to stop letting tomorrow's weight crush tonight's peace. He said, there is a prayer that can change the posture of your heart before you sleep. Not a formula, just honest surrender. Something like, Father, I cannot control everything that is coming. But you can. I give you my fears. I give you my family. I give you the thing I have no idea how to fix. Help me trust you enough to actually rest. He said that kind of prayer is not weakness. It is one of the most honest and courageous things a person can do. Because it is admitting the truth, that you are not God, and that you are choosing to trust the one who is. Then he showed me two people going to sleep on the same night. The first had gotten into an argument with someone they loved earlier that day. They went to bed still holding it, justified in their anger, rehearsing what was said, building their case inside their head. The second person had been in a similar situation but had stopped before bed and prayed. Asked God to help them forgive. Asked to be shown where they might be wrong. And by morning, he let me see what the unresolved anger had done in the first person. It had not shrunk. It had settled in deeper. This was the lesson about what happens when you carry anger and bitterness into sleep night after night. And it was not what I expected him to talk about. He pointed to Ephesians 4 verse 26. Let not the sun go down upon your wrath. He said that verse is not just practical relationship advice. It is spiritual protection for your soul. He said, when you go to sleep still holding anger at someone, it does not disappear overnight. It gets more comfortable. It roots itself deeper. One of the most powerful prayers you can pray before bed is simply, Lord, show me where I am wrong. Give me the courage to apologize when I need to. Help me forgive when forgiving feels impossible. He said real prayer does not only ask God to fix other people. Real prayer invites God to fix us. Then he said something I have never forgotten. Some people spend years praying for God to change their situation when the actual change that needs to happen is inside them. He showed me a person who had a serious and consistent prayer life. Praying every night. Long prayers. Earnest prayers. Genuinely devoted. But then he showed me something underneath that. An area of that person's life where God had already clearly spoken. A relationship that needed to end. A habit that needed to be surrendered. A person that needed to be forgiven. And that person kept praying, sometimes even praying about those very things, but never actually moving. Using prayer almost as a way to feel like they were doing something without doing the actual thing God was asking. He wanted me to understand something that I think gets missed a lot. Prayer is not a substitute for obedience. He pointed to John 14 verse 15. If ye love me, keep my commandments. He said prayer and obedience were never meant to be separated. Prayer is not the thing you do instead of obeying. Prayer is what gives you the strength and the will to obey. He said, if I have already told you to forgive someone and you have refused, praying more hours does not fix that. What fixes it is forgiving them. If I have already shown you that something in your life is pulling you away from me and you keep returning to it, the prayer that matters most is the one where you finally stop making excuses and surrender it. He was not harsh when he said it, but he was honest. And I think that honesty was its own kind of love. Then he brought me to see something I found genuinely unsettling. He showed me a person who had started praying at night with good intentions and sincere faith. But over time something had shifted. The prayer had slowly become less about God and more about what the person could get out of the experience. Every dream was being analyzed for hidden meaning. Every unusual feeling during prayer was treated as a supernatural visitation. They were tracking numbers, looking for signs, chasing the next spiritual sensation. And the further they chased the experience, the further they were actually drifting from the relationship. He said this was a warning he specifically wanted me to carry back. Because it is happening more than people realize. He pointed to 2 Corinthians 5 verse 7. For we walk by faith, not by sight. He said Christianity is not built on collecting supernatural experiences. It is built on Christ, on His Word, on faith that does not need a vision to stay standing. He said, if you pray at night, do not demand that I give you a sign to prove I was there. Do not assume every thought is a word from heaven. Do not believe every dream automatically came from me. Test everything against Scripture. 1 John 4 verse 1 says believe not every spirit, but try the spirits whether they are of God. The safest foundation is always my word. Not feelings. Not coincidences. Not supernatural excitement. And not experiences, including this one. What I am showing you right now should point you back to Scripture and back to relationship with me. If it ever points you somewhere else, question it. He shifted the scene and showed me a person at the end of a genuinely hard day. Nothing had gone right. Tired and discouraged. They sat down to pray, and the entire prayer was a list. Everything wrong, everything needed, everything they wanted God to fix. It was not a bad prayer. God heard it. But then he showed me what that same prayer could have looked like if that person had first paused and looked back at the day before looking forward. And I saw all the things they had completely missed. Small things. Significant things. Things God had already done that day that the person had walked right past without noticing. He said some people come to him every night asking for more without ever acknowledging what they already have. And something is genuinely missing when gratitude is missing. He pointed to Psalm 92 verses 1-2. It is a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord. He said gratitude is not just a feeling. It is an act of remembrance. Choosing to look back at what God has already done before you bring him your next request. He said, before you ask me for another blessing, remember the ones I have already given you. Thank me for the day you just lived through, even the hard parts. Thank me for forgiveness that is already available to you. Thank me for the strength that carried you through today, because that same strength will carry you through tomorrow. Gratitude reminds you that I have already been faithful, and if I carried you through yesterday, you have a real reason to trust me with what is coming. Then he brought me to see someone who had been praying about the same situation for a long time, faithfully, persistently, and the situation had not changed. I could see the frustration in that person. The quiet wondering about whether God was actually listening, whether they were doing something wrong. They kept asking for the circumstance to change, and he showed me what God was actually offering that person in response. It was not the changed circumstance. It was something the person kept setting aside because it was not what they had asked for. He said this is one of the hardest truths about prayer. Sometimes the answer is not what you asked for. Sometimes God changes you before he changes the circumstance. He showed me Paul, a man who prayed about his suffering and asked God to remove it. And God did not remove it. Instead he said, 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, my grace is sufficient for thee. He said, an unanswered prayer is not always an ignored prayer. Sometimes the answer I am giving is not the changed circumstance. The answer is the strength to carry it, the wisdom to navigate it, the patience to wait it out. The peace in the middle of something you cannot control. Philippians 4 verses 6-7 promises that if you bring your requests to me with thanksgiving, the peace of God, which goes beyond understanding, will guard your heart and your mind. That peace is not nothing. That peace is sometimes the most powerful thing I can give someone. Some people are praying for a miracle when what I'm actually offering them is peace. And they keep refusing the peace because they are holding out for the miracle. But the peace is also me. Do not refuse it. Then he showed me something I found unexpectedly moving. He showed me a household at night with everyone asleep, and one person awake. Not from worry, not from anxiety, awake on purpose, praying. And he showed me who that person was praying for, each person in that house by name, with specifics. The child struggling at school. The spouse carrying something they had not told anyone. The parent whose health was getting worse. And he let me see in a way I cannot fully explain that those prayers were not nothing. They were reaching. They were real. He said one of the most powerful and underused forms of nighttime prayer is intercession. Praying for other people while they are sleeping. You can pray for your children, your spouse, your parents, your friends. People in your church who are struggling. People going through things they have not told anyone about. Then he said something unexpected. Matthew 5 verse 44 says pray for them which despitefully use you and persecute you. Imagine ending your day praying for someone who hurt you. Not replaying the offense, not rehearsing what you should have said, but actually asking me to work in their life. Asking me to give you the grace to forgive them. That kind of prayer does something inside you that you cannot manufacture any other way. It loosens the grip of bitterness. It puts you in alignment with the God who extends grace to people who are against him. Intercession at night changes you while everyone else is sleeping. Then he showed me something simple but important. He showed me two people who both wanted to pray. The first sat down and just started. Honest words, some of them stumbling, some incomplete sentences, but real. The second person sat on the edge of their bed for a long time and then did not pray at all, because they were not sure if they were doing it right. They had heard other people pray and thought what they had to offer was too simple, too ordinary. He said many people avoid prayer for exactly that reason. They think they need the right words, the right length, the right level of spiritual intensity. He said, "I am not impressed by vocabulary. I look at the heart." He pointed to his warning in Matthew 6 verse 7 about vain repetition, piling up words as if the quantity moves God. Then he pointed to the model prayer from Matthew 6 verse 9. "Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name." He said, notice where that prayer starts. Not with a request, not with a list. It starts with relationship, our Father. You're not approaching a distant God who needs convincing. You're coming to a Father who already knows you. The most powerful prayer you can pray tonight might be 2 words. Help me. Forgive me. I trust you. Simple prayers from a sincere heart reach me just as surely as the most polished words ever spoken. Start there. That is always enough. The last thing he showed me before everything shifted was something I carry with me every single night now. He showed me a person praying, genuinely, sincerely handing something over to God, meaning every word. And then within minutes, picking it right back up. The anxiety returning. The mind running through the scenarios again. The what ifs coming back. The burden sitting right back on their shoulders as if the prayer had not happened. And he looked at me and said, "They prayed, but they did not let go." He said there is a difference between saying you trust God and actually releasing the grip. And that difference matters more than most people realize. He pointed to Psalm 4 verse 8. "I will both lay me down in peace and sleep." He said the person who wrote that was not in a perfect situation. The problems had not been solved, but they could actually sleep, because they were not carrying everything alone. He said, "Your circumstances do not have to be resolved for you to sleep in peace. You just have to actually trust me with them. Not just say that you do, but release the grip. Trust is a practice. Every night you choose to put your fears into my hands instead of staying awake with them, you're practicing trust. And every time you practice it, it becomes a little more real. Rest is not laziness. Rest is faith. And I want you to rest." Before I came back, he made sure I understood what he had not told me. He had not told me that every Christian must pray at midnight. He had not told me that missing nighttime prayer means God is angry. He had not told me that a specific hour guarantees a miracle or that every sensation during prayer is from heaven. He said the message was simple. Seek God. Trust Him. Obey Him. Bring your fears to Him. Be honest about your sins. Pray for the people in your life. Give thanks for what He has already done. And then rest. That is biblical prayer. Not a formula. Not a ritual. Not a system. A relationship. Coming back was not dramatic. There was a jolt, pain, and the sound of hospital machines. I opened my eyes and realized I had survived. For a long time, I told no one what I had experienced. But that first night home, I lay in the darkness and simply talked to God. No formula. No watching the clock. I told Him my fears. I thanked Him for sparing my life. And I asked Him to help me trust Him with tomorrow. Then something returned that I had not felt in years. Peace. Jesus had shown me that prayer is not about perfect words or specific hour. It is about coming to Him honestly. Matthew 11 verse 28 says, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." Psalm 121 verse 4 reminds us that He never sleeps. He is awake right now. He hears you. So tonight, bring Him your fears. Confess what you need to confess. Pray for those you love. Give thanks. Then release tomorrow into His hands. Before you close your eyes, simply whisper, "Jesus, I trust you." That is enough.